Hi, this is Earl Reagan and welcome to Camping Indiana Online. This was an unplanned, unscheduled video, so we've had a lot of people asking where Camping Indiana came from, what it believes in, approaching 20,000 members, where we see it going, and just some fundamentals. Along with that, a lot of people have asked me where I came from, what I believe in, my experience, my background. I've had a couple people say, well, what kind of expert are you? And so, instead of piecemealing it in the forum, I just decided to do this video and let everyone watch it and go from there. I even had to make notes. I have been a wild, primitive outdoorsman for 60 years, 61 years. I was born into a family of wild, primitive outdoorsmen who were masters at bushcraft, at outdoor survival. I mean, my dad and my granddad knew their stuff. So I grew up camping, wild, free, and primitive in some pretty crazy places. Northern Michigan, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana. So my dad, who started out in the world as a stockbroker and a finance analyst, ended up being a full-time outdoors writer. And he was a good writer. He wrote for Better Camping, he wrote for Canoe magazine, he wrote for Guns and Ammo. He's just everything to do with the outdoors. My dad was the man from the late 60s until the mid 80s. So I grew up with this. I grew up knowing all these things, and by the time I was 10, I probably knew more than most adults. I vividly remember a trip to Douglas Lake, Tennessee when I was 5 years old. In fact, I've put the picture up online, and it was great. I mean, we had a Jeep Wagoneer, four-wheel drive, and we went out in the bush. I mean, we'd spend an hour going through the bush just to get to where we were camping. And Dad had a favorite spot down there he liked to camp. And yet we were camped around black bear everywhere. There were eastern diamondback rattlesnakes all over the place. So at a young age, I had to learn how to deal with these things, but I learned from a master, being my father. So we also camped down in the Cumberland Gap National Wilderness in Kentucky a couple times. We camped in Brown and Monroe County quite a bit. We camped in Michigan. We had 35 acres of forest in Michigan, so we spent a lot of time up there. And it was a neat way to grow up. And then my parents split up when I was 7, and for a couple years, me and my dad went out every other weekend, and in the summer, going canoe camping. We'd go down the Whitewater, we'd go down some rivers in Michigan, and I knew how to pack a canoe, I knew how to paddle a canoe, and the canoe camping was awesome. I loved it, and I still do it. We have Fran and I have a 17-foot Grumman aluminum canoe that we use often. So anyway, so I got this just incredible foundation from my family. And I vividly remember the trips to Tennessee and to Cumberland Gap. So anyway, my mom remarried when I was 10, and my stepfather hated the outdoors. He hated camping. He'd bought a tent and gone camping once, and that was it. He was done. And so I joined Boy Scouts. And I didn't join Scouts to earn merit badges and work my way up the ranks. I joined Scouts to go on camping trips. And I went on every camping trip I could. And I realized that by 10 years old, I knew more than most everybody else, which was really kind of a neat feeling. And so I spent 3 years in Boy Scouts, and we went all over Indiana. We went to Pokagon, we went to Brown County a bunch of different times. We went over to Brookville a bunch of different times. And it was very enjoyable. At the same time, my stepfather sent me to Ritzy Summer Camp up in Eagle River, Wisconsin, which I didn't really care for the camp because it was very regimented, and it was mostly city kids from Chicago that knew nothing about the outdoors, and they were just kind of playing outdoorsmen. But they also did a lot of canoe trips, which kept me connected to who I am and how I grew up. So virtually every chance I got, I went on a canoe trip. Overnight canoe trips, 3 and 4 day canoe trips. And a little later on, I'll tell you a terrifying winter outdoor survival story that has to do with those trips. So I went on I was on the Wisconsin River, I was on the Wolf River, I was on a bunch of lakes. We went to Boundary Waters Canoe area up in Minnesota, which is beautiful, unspoiled, pristine wilderness. And it is just a fabulous place, but you have to know what you're doing. And so I learned a lot, you know, when I was young, and then by the time we were doing that, I was good to go. And then later on as a teenager, after my mom and stepdad split up, I did a little bit of camping, you know, mostly in central Indiana, just because I was a teenager and I had other things I wanted to do. So, I got married when I was 20, and my kids' mom and I, they didn't have kids yet, we went camping. We went to Wisconsin, we went to Georgia, we went to Kentucky, we went to Brown County, Monroe County quite a bit, and we enjoyed our camping. And then we had our 2 children, and I raised my children pretty much like I was raised. Maybe not the wild trip to Tennessee like I got to do, but I raised my children in the outdoors and taught them primitive bushcraft skills, taught them how to cook on a fire, taught them how to float a tarp. And my younger daughter Kelly is still involved in the forum and will tell you what that kind of background did for her. So it was a great way to raise my kids. And as an adult, you know, we went camping with the children a lot, Mississinawa a lot, Yellowwood State Forest a lot. We went canoeing on the Whitewater, we went canoeing on Sugar Creek. Again, we went up to Pokagon once, went to Chain of Lakes State Park once, which I loved, because I camped in the canoe campsite way at the back where nobody can drive to, and it's quiet and it's beautiful back there. It has really good fishing, and that's probably one of the things I enjoy doing the most when I'm out camping is going fishing. So I have the things I like to do. I used to hike a lot. As I've gotten older, I've got neuropathy in my feet, and I don't hike like I used to. Camping in Indiana originally started as an information exchange in 2010, and it wasn't online. It was just, I knew some people in northern Indiana, and I wanted to know, you know, where's a good place to camp up around Plymouth. And then they would ask me, well, we lived in Bloomington, well, what's good to camp around Bloomington? How's Hardin Ridge? And it was like, bing, light bulb over the head, and I realized that there was a great way to share information. So I kind of debated putting up a blog or a website, and I wasn't really sure what to do. And my daughter said, Dad, just put a Facebook group up. So in 2011, I started Camping Indiana on Facebook, and it was with 10 people. The first year and a half was all primitive, outdoorsy people that were similar to me. And then at about a year and a half, I decided, you know, I'm going to open it up to everybody. RV people, I mean, let everybody in, because it's not about arguing types of camping. It's about sharing information about somebody from northern Indiana wanting to know about Clifty Creek down in southern Indiana, or people from other states are starting to ask questions about our campgrounds, which is really neat. And so it was primarily for sharing information, and along with the information about the camping areas, people share campfire recipes, funny stories, resources, tricks, tips, guidelines, and outdoor knowledge, which is very important. And I'll get to that in a minute. And so it has grown. Camping Indiana is now approaching 20,000 people, which I'm speechless. I'm just very proud that it's happening. And so this is all because of my life's passion of outdoorsmanship. It's my life's passion for camping, and it's a very big interest of mine to help other people learn these skills. I want to share these skills. You know, I'm not going to be around forever, and I want people to know how to do this stuff. The one thing I know absolutely nothing about is RVs. And please, I'm not running them down or criticizing them. If people want to do that, that's fine. It's just never been my area of interest, so I know nothing. However, we've got some really good people in Camping Indiana that are experienced in RVs, and they know what they're doing, and they're great for giving tricks and tips and guidelines, and they can share information with the primitive people. You know, we find out about different parks and different recipes to cook and stuff, and that's the big important thing about Camping Indiana is it being able to share that kind of information. And so on that regards to RV and primitive, I absolutely do not allow arguing about types of camping. I've had primitive campers go, well, RVs aren't really camping, it's glamping. And, you know, people get all offended by that and starts a big argument. And then I've had people with RVs go, well, tent campers are nasty and they only do that because they can't afford an RV. And I don't allow that either. So arguing about different types is just forbidden, and I will mute or kick people out for that. I know that sounds a little harsh, but I'm trying to keep the forum from being an argument clinic. And another thing about Camping Indiana is I make $0 off it. I've had people accuse me of having ulterior motives, that I'm making money off the merchandise, or I get paid to be the moderator or something. No, I make nothing. I do this as a volunteer because of my passion. I chose a vendor that could make the shirts and the stickers and the signs, do all the shipping. I don't have to mess with it. It doesn't go through my hands. And the vendor said, do you want to put in a little bit for yourself on all these sales? And I said, no, just keep the prices down. That's what interests me the most, is, you know, keeping prices cheap for our members. And I think they do a terrific job. So I make no money. I've had a couple. I don't allow advertising. I don't allow spam. Our moderators work hard at keeping spam out. I've had a couple of big companies offer me a considerable amount of money to advertise in Camping Indiana's news feed, and I said, absolutely not. Not happening. Forget it. Take your money elsewhere. I'm not interested. So I make $0 from Camping Indiana, and I guess in an ethical sense, I'm proud of that. And nobody can ever accuse me of having other motives. I believe very strongly in educating people about the outdoors, and here's why. You know, that trip I talked about going to Tennessee when I was 5 years old, I knew about bears and snakes, as did my family. If we didn't know all those safety guidelines, and let's say my parents left food on the table, we'd have bears in our camp, and we'd have bears sniffing our tent. We'd have bears all over the place. So the safety guidelines in that regard, so like hoisting the food up in trees or putting it in the Jeep, is just common sense. And here in Indiana, it's the same. You have some potentially dangerous animals, and you have to keep your kids safe from them. You have to keep your family safe from snakes. So if you're going camping somewhere, you got to realize you are out in the animal's habitat. You are a visitor to that habitat. And in order to visit properly and keep your kids safe and teach them, you have to learn the guidelines so that everybody's safe. I mean, that's the big thing. And like my first wife, she grew up in Southern Oregon, and she camped around grizzly bears. And grizzly bears are nasty. They'll look at you and then eat you. They're not docile like a black bear. And so she grew up with that knowledge too. And I think it's a great way to grow up. Now, let's say her family didn't teach her anything, she'd have gotten eaten by a grizzly bear. So it's really, really important to teach the children. And when I put safety guidelines in there about wearing boots and stuff like that, that's from my 61 years of experience. That's that I know how to keep people safe. And I'm not talking just about the boots, I'm talking about all the aspects. And those reasons to learn safety are super, super important. And now I'm going to go over, I allotted myself 15 minutes, but I'm going to go over 3 minutes. A wild survival story that happened to me when I was 12. I was in far northern Wisconsin at the summer camp. We were on a 4-day canoe trip. There was 12 kids and 2 adults. A camp counselor and a guy they called a tripper that organized the trip and did all the cooking, and he was good at that. And the third night, we were supposed to camp on an island in the middle of this beautiful lake. And the lake was like 7 miles long and 5 miles wide. And it was about 6 o'clock, and we were all getting hungry, and this horrible, we could see a horrible thunderstorm off to the west. And it was coming towards this lake, and he was trying to figure out if we could make it to the island to camp or not. And he said, well, let's go to the island. I said, no. I said, we need to shelter in place right here because we're not going to make it out there before the storm hits. And he looked at me like, you're 12 years old. What do you know? And I said, we've got to shelter in place. He goes, no, we got to go. So we get out in this lake. We get out there about 45 minutes, and the storm comes rolling in. There was lightning. I'm talking ground strike lightning hitting trees on the sides of the lake, and we're in aluminum canoes. It was terrifying. And initially it was deluging. It was pouring. Everybody's gear was wet except for mine because I use waterproof stuff sacks. And we were all terrified. I mean, it was very frightening. So we get out to the campsite. It took several hours instead of an hour. And there was no way we could camp there. And so the other end of the lake, there was a boat ramp. It was about a mile away. So we paddled over there. By this time it's 9 o'clock at night. It's dark. The temperature's falling. And the guy who was supposed to be the outdoors expert running the trip was in shock. He was absolutely speechless. He didn't know what to say. We were all asking him, well, what do we do? His name was Ron. I said, Ron, what do we do? And all he could do was stammer. And he was like, he couldn't even speak. And so we're all terrified. It's still pouring. There's still lightning. And I grabbed two of my buddies and I said, let's get the tarps out of that canoe and some rope. And so we got the tarps and the rope while everybody else was watching, including the adult. And now the camp counselor took off because there was a payphone about 6 miles away. He took 2 flashlights and was going to hike the 6 miles in the rain to the payphone to call a camp to come get us. They were supposed to have come gotten us like 9 o'clock the next morning, but he was going to call and tell them it was an emergency. So with the leader sitting there stammering and all of us soaked at 48 degrees and starting to get hypothermic, I strung tarps up in the trees. And all of a sudden we had a place to sit that was dry. And I told the guys, I said, go get all the birch bark you can. Birch bark will burn soaking wet. I said, go get big handfuls of birch bark and some sticks. So we built this fire underneath the tarps, and the fire went up and it rained. I mean, it warmed all of us up while it was still pouring, and it kept everybody from getting hypothermia. The bus shows up about midnight, and we had to load up all the canoes and all of our gear. So we finally take off from there about 12:30, and this guy that was supposed to be in charge of the trip was still just speechless. It's acting like a complete nincompoop. So we get back to camp at 1:30 in the morning, and thank God they got the cooks up, because we hadn't eaten dinner. We were all soaked. They had hot soup and some bologna sandwiches, and it was great. I mean, we all scarfed down and then went to bed. The next day, the camp director came and got all of us and asked us what happened and why it was so bad. And he tried talking to the leader, who wouldn't give him any straight answers. You know what? They fired him. He was done. The point for telling you the story is really super important. One person's poor decision endangered 14 lives because he didn't stop and think. We ended up out on that lake during the thunderstorm, and we all could have been killed by lightning. We could have all had hypothermia. And one person's outdoor skills at 12 years old knew how to put the tarps together, knew how to light a fire, and kept us all out of the hospital. And that's my survival story, and it's a true story. And it is fundamentally important to teach kids especially these outdoor skills, because whether you're in an RV or whether you're in a tent, you might find yourself in a situation that's difficult, and having that outdoor knowledge is how you are going to survive. And so that's where Camping Indiana came from. It's an absolute joy to be your admin. It's an absolute joy to run Camping Indiana. That's where I came from. I have taught canoeing to Girl Scout troops. I have taught primitive outdoor skills to several different groups. I have taught bushcraft skills to people. So yeah, I'm an expert. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying that's where I came from. So combine that with the interface of Camping Indiana, we're having a great time. So Boy, I ran way long. Fran's sitting there trying to wave me off. You're free to ask questions, you're free to make comments, and I will say that I am absolutely super proud of this group. Super proud of Camping Indiana Gives Back earlier in the year, and we're going to continue helping the DNR that way. And I am moved by helping everybody with all this stuff and teaching everybody outdoor skills. So thank you for watching. I hope this explains to you why I try and teach these things. And everybody have a safe camping trip, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.